Sex education. Not as spicy as the actual act itself, but important nonetheless. Tonight, on the first ever TMF Debates, we will be visiting the two loudest sides of the topic, should sex education be taught in public schools? The characters for tonight's sex education talk are pro and anti. Pro, standing proud in the sex education must be mandatory now corner, and anti, standing in the parents' rights must be respected corner. The rules for today's debate are as follows. First, both sides will take turns delivering opening statements. Then we'll move into a verbal fisticuffs and ending with closing remarks, and leaving you to join the debate and decide. Now, due to an off-screen coin flip, Pro has won the right to give the first opening statement. Now, Pro, if you will, please, what are your opening remarks?
Thank you, Moderator. The majority of parents out there already accept the fact that they have a shared responsibility to educate their children with their teachers. Teachers are trusted so much, in fact, that in many places on the planet, kids are required to go to school. They are sent to school to receive an education that includes science, history, math, and many, many other subjects, all taught as accurately as possible. So does it not make sense to then include sex education in this already existing system? The lack of sex education can result in many unwanted side effects, such as STIs or unplanned pregnancies. And we can cite multiple studies that have shown that proper education actually reduces the chances of children engaging in premarital sex or sex too early on, and will help them make more educated decisions.
Thank you, Pro. Now, Anti, what are your opening statements?
Thank you, Moderator. You don't need me to tell you that the human race has had a long-standing tradition about the conversation of the birds and the bees. Whether the parent notices the changes or the children come to them with questions, the conversation was always kept inside the household. Some parents may teach their child everything about sex. Some parents may teach them just a gray little middle area. And some parents may just teach them the bare necessities to have them get by until they can be married and start having sex. Regardless of what a parent may or may not teach their child about sex, the conversation should always be a family's decision, not the school's. Schools are for education, not indoctrination.
There you have it, folks. You have the pro-sex education, the anti-sex education, and now, please join the debate if you hear anything you agree or disagree with in the comments section down below. Now it's time to TMF Debate.
I don't disagree with you, and I don't think anyone else disagrees with you that sex is a personal matter. What I'm saying is that sex education is a reasonable duty to bestow upon our already trusted educators, who are there to teach our children math, science, history as accurately as possible. And I believe that sex is not too sacred to throw in there to be medically accurate as well.
Excuse me? Sex is sacred. Your comprehensive sex education completely strips away the significance of a child changing into an adult away from the family. These are crucial times for everyone involved in the household, and a teacher should not be expected to have the level of love and knowledge of the child's personal needs to be able to provide them with accurate sexual guidance. Sex education only lays out the facts to a very confusing matter and expects children to grapple it by themselves. This will inevitably cause anxiety, confusion, and could very well be in contrast to their family values, which will then place them in trouble with their parents. There is nothing wrong with allowing the parents to take the time to talk to their children about a very important matter and not bringing a stranger into their bedroom. A good parent will know when it's time for the talk.
You must be a little confused, because the emotional aspects would be covered in fully comprehensive sex education. We would start the education slowly from kindergarten and then build up from there. And by the time we actually talk about sex with kids, like the actual act, it's not to promote sex, it's not to encourage them to go out and have sex, it's to educate them as much as possible so that they can make a reasonable and educated decision for themselves. Parents may often be way too embarrassed to have this conversation. I know multiple mothers and fathers that are scared to talk to their daughter about her first menarche. And they are not the outlier in this. We should not shy away from worldwide education as beneficial for those kids whose parents are not willing to talk to them about this. Teachers are a much safer option when it comes to talking to children about sex, because once they start to connect the dots and figure out where they come from, I know I don't want to be thinking about my parents when I start to realize that I came from them.
Jesus! Why do you have to be perverted about it? I know I wasn't thinking about my parents. When my father started to talk to me, I was too busy wondering what I would do with my crush at school.
At schools! Schools! That is where most people meet their first crush or love interest. Further reassuring and pushing the fact that medically accurate sex education in this environment would be beneficial. Sex education would ease the concerns of all parents and children involved, because nobody would have to worry whether their child or their friend or their love interest has actually been briefed on what sex entails.
First, there are many other social opportunities such as church, youth groups, team sporting events. The list goes on, in which your child could meet somebody who sparks the flame inside of them. And second, if we agree that schools do induce romance, then we should be more inclined to push the teachers to tell parents if they notice any changes in behavior or physical appearance within the children. You're right that teachers can play a crucial role, and that role is informing parents if they notice any changes, so that the parents will be better educated on why and when they need to have the talk. People of all walks of life should not be forced into one single lifestyle. And that's what your comprehensive sex education would. It would be forcing everyone into a singular mold. And this is how you approach sex, and this is how you approach relationships. Schools can only serve up a one-size-fits-all answer. And I'm sorry, but that does not account for the individuality of every family and child.
I'm sorry, I have to agree to disagree, because I don't feel like it is safe to prompt the talk once we notice adult changes after puberty. The sex talk needs to happen long before puberty happens. Once a child hits puberty, they are more destined to be sexually driven, whether that takes the form of touching themselves or consensually interacting with others. But that is a natural experience that we must all endure. And puberty is a scary and confusing time. So why would you want to deny your child, my child, or any other child additional education on the matter? I agree with you that parents need to take responsibility and talk to their children, but is it really fair for them to shoulder the entire burden? Schools can go into more depth and get away from the embarrassing pretenses of talking to parents that teens often have. With proper funding, a school can even provide condoms and other forms of birth control to encourage...
Don't you dare say encourage safety. By providing birth control and condoms, you are encouraging children to have premarital sex, which could very well be counter to many, many families' virtues. A child may receive a condom, and then what? You expect a child not to try it out, not to figure out how to put it on, and then find someone to try it out with? And if, and this is a big if the parents are in favor of their child being promiscuous, maybe they weren't ready to have that conversation with their child. Maybe they aren't ready for their child to start engaging in sex. And now the schools have stepped in, thrown condoms at them, and gone, go ahead, Jimmy, have at it. And what if the child does engage in premarital sex? That could bring upon shame and embarrassment and other feelings that they were not ready to handle. And then, just by the school stepping in, you've naturally placed a barrier between them and their parents. For many teens are way too shy to talk to their parents about their first sexual experiences. But if we can get to the kids before they start having sex, then we can encourage the family unit to stay together instead of discouraging unity as you propose with your comprehensive sex education. And if we're going to be honest about public schools, you know how many parents get lazy once they put their children into school? They're not going out and teaching their children additional math problems or additional history lessons or additional literature lessons. No, a lot of parents, once education is put into the schools, simply rely on the schools purely to educate their child. We do not want such an important issue such as sex to fall off parents' radars, to keep it in their camp, to keep it within their responsibility, to keep it within the family. We need to not put it into schools.
Parents do need to shoulder that burden. However, that doesn't mean that schools are automatically insignificant and incapable of aiding a child. If a parent truly only does rely on a school to educate their child, they're not really parenting that well. Just because your child attends school doesn't mean you're allowed to stop parenting. You still have plenty to teach them, and schools providing birth control to children is merely social acceptance that puberty happens.
Before it just evolves into more of a bickering match, let's go ahead and stop it here. Pro, since you went first, Anti, it is your turn. What are your closing remarks? Parents may not have a choice when it comes to science, history, or math and what their child is learning, but parents need to have a choice when it comes to some of the most life-altering and significant choices that people have to make, and one of those is sex. Trust me, while it may be awkward for parents and maybe teenagers involved to have the conversation, this is the best way to ensure that true values are passed down from generation to generation and we don't get lost in promoting promiscuity and lifestyles that may be counter to what we believe in. And regardless of any initial embarrassment, believe me, they will thank you later on. Now, Pro, what are your last words?
If you're a teenager who's just barely learning what it means to be an adult, it would behoove you to be educated as accurately as possible. After infancy, pre or post-puberty, humans are sexual creatures, and many of us have our first sexual experiences as young children. If we wait until our parents notice changes, it'll probably be far too late, as we've already done experimenting ourselves, and that'll be uneducated experimenting, which can be dangerous. I believe truly it is unfair to place this burden wholly on parents. Comprehensive sex education helps lay a solid foundation for not only the children, but also a parent and the family as a whole.
Should sex education be offered in public schools? You've heard the pro, you've heard the anti. Now, please join the debate and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Which side do you think is won? Are you on one of these sides or are you somewhere in the middle? Please join the debate and let me know, because I really want to hear from you and I really appreciate you spending your time with me. Now, let's wrap this up. Please hit that notification bell so make sure that you join the debate and finish with the TMF Middle Ground Part 2 on sex education that'll be coming out in 2 weeks. And if you're watching this episode past the initial 2 weeks, just go ahead and click or tap the screen right there to watch it now. And if you enjoy what I do on this channel, please check out the description box for easy to follow me links across the interweb and my Patreon page to truly join the debate. And now, as always, this has been TMF, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the time in whatever zone you find yourself. Toodles!